Hello and welcome to the first ever episode of Muckin Around with Springbridge. I'm your host for today. My name's Bethan. I'm the office manager at Springbridge Direct. This podcast is all about exploring the world of landscape, supply and everything in between. Each podcast will be joined by a different industry expert to uncover insights, trends and stories that shape our field. This week we have two very special guests on the sofa, directors of Springbridge, Tom and Julia Hawkins. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Bethan.
Thank you, Bethan.
So let's start at the beginning. Where did Springbridge start?
Way back in 1988. That's where it started.
It's also the year I was born as well.
It was. It was a big year for myself, Julia, and my husband, Bob. I was pregnant, later found out it was twins. And I was teaching at the time. And then I thought, I can't really go back to teaching. I've almost got a class of my own here. So we decided to start our own little business. Bob was a bit unhappy in the job he was doing at the time. He had been a landscape gardener and he'd taken a bit of time off. And we had this opportunity to use a small piece of land, which was based in Ealing, just off Gordon Road and just off Springbridge Road, hence the name, which we came up with. I think I was probably in hospital at the time.
It started out, it was called Springbridge Nurseries, wasn't it?
It was Springbridge Nurseries.
Yeah, because it was actually a garden centre. Because I think a lot of people now see our company as a sort of, we run tipper lorries, grab lorries, we do sort of recycling services and things like that. But that's not where it started at all. It was actually it was actually a proper garden centre / nursery where we grew plants and everything. And over the sort of 35 years, isn't it?
Well, 37.
Sorry, 37 years. It's obviously it's evolved into not a garden centre or nursery at all, and we no longer sell a single plant. And now we run 24 trucks and we've got a recycling centre. And so it took a long time to evolve.
Well, it morphed over the years because, as anyone who's ever worked in the plant industry, and I'm talking plants as in growing plants here, would know that it's very seasonal, and you very much get a big season in the spring, May and June, maybe July, April, May, June, July. Then after that it can get very difficult. You get cold days, long days, so on. So we were always trying to find something else as well to bring into it. We would sell tea chests in the summer. We would sell gas in the winter, bottled gas. We would do Christmas trees for Christmas. Anything to try and keep the money coming in. And people were always, because we were quite small, it was a small area, we didn't have any parking, it was difficult to get deliveries in. We offered a really good delivery service. People would come in and order it, and we'd literally rush out with our own cars and deliver it for them. And whatever the customer would ask, we would do our very darndest to either supply ourselves or at least put them in touch with someone who would look after them. And we got very well known in that area. But as you can imagine, we started to outgrow it and start to think big. And that's when we got Denham, which was in 1995. We were lucky enough to become a chance to have a largish parcel of land.
It started out as a small holding Denham, didn't it? It was from the council.
Another growing nursery.
It was a growing nursery. And then I think one of the biggest changes that happened was, I'm not sure what year it was, but when you started selling turf and topsoil when I was a kid, because that sort of opened up a new market. Whereas when you're selling sort of nursery plants and selling them in an alleyway, your market is generally sort of private customers, sort of Mr. and Mrs. Jones coming on a Sunday. Sure. As soon as you started selling turf and topsoil, your market then changed more to like business customers, landscapers and that kind of thing. Because not many private, I mean, there are a few, but not many private customers would sort of buy and do a whole lawn themselves. That's quite a that's a big job. Whereas they might buy a plant or something, but they wouldn't necessarily buy 100 square meters of turf and 5 ton bags of topsoil. So at that point, I think that was the start of the transformation from a garden centre.
And also we started to realise, because we linked in with a company that would sell sheds as well, and he marketed his for us, and we would have people calling from virtually all over the southeast of England, and that really made us realise there was a much bigger market than just our local people. And I think that's really what got us off the ground was, well, if you like, thinking a bit bigger and a bit further afield and further and wider.
How would you deliver to those people back then if you were just so small?
Well, again, we started off with a Land Rover and a trailer on the back. That was the first thing, and then it soon became apparent that wasn't big enough. So then we had 3.5 ton lorries.
We used vans,
little vans, right? They'd be like vans. We had a lot of vans.
I remember going when I was a kid. I remember we had a little was it a Mitsubishi van?
Yes,
remember that van?
Yeah,
and we used to go down.
The Canter.
There was a turf grower down somewhere. We used to go.
And pick it up.
Where was it? In somewhere in Somerset or something. We used to go on a
top turf or
something like that. Yeah, I don't think they're still there anymore. And we used to go. I was about 8 or 9, and I used to sit in the passenger seat. And my dad would drive me down there, and we go and pick up 2 or 3 pallets. Well, probably not 2 or 3 pallets on a small van, but like we used to get a pallet of turf or whatever it was. Come back to Ealing for when
it was all handballed. You had to pick every roll up and restack it on the pallet, and it would all be delivered, to the customer handballed, and they'd say, "Oh, can you take it round the back for us?" Oh, those days, I'm afraid, I don't think you could get the drivers to do the same work today. They're so used to having little moffats on the back and their grabs and so on.
And what year was it, would you say, that we got our first truck? Because I remember my dad doing his HGV, because we had
I tell you exactly when that was. That would be 1999, something like that,
maybe,
just before
97, 99, around that sort of time. We had a bit of a problem because obviously the transit vans, they could only hold a ton, and the orders were getting bigger and bigger.
Do you remember Bob used to take the radios and everything out, because obviously you're limited with the weight on the vans.
Yeah.
And he took the radios and everything out, everything possible, strip it so he could get another roll of turf on there. I just never forget that. That was funny. Because
we got our first truck. It was I believe it was a Bedford, wasn't it? A green Bedford from the army.
Like the army used to use. It wasn't from the army, but it was a Bedford, and they all complained because the clutches were so bad on them.
That's right. He's still got a bad knee. He complains about that. The clutch was so heavy, and
apparently all the army guys complained about them as well because of the clutches. Yes,
and we used to go up and down the A40. And the only good thing about the Bedford that I remember was that because it was so old, it didn't have a speed limiter. So my dad used to always sort of joke that he could do more deliveries than everybody else because it didn't. It was. I think it was exempt from a speed limiter because it was so old. Whereas all the new lorries were limited to with the speed limiter, and he always used to make a joke about that. Yeah. But that was a luxury because it had a crane on it, so we didn't have to unload all the turf by hand when we got to the job. So that was a benefit to us, and also a bit neater for the customer as well. It wasn't all turf splayed all over their driveway and stuff. So that was a big
and about
big
the same sort of time then the bulk bags were starting to come in, because up until that point the majority of people would have had soiled sand, anything like that delivered, just literally tipped off the lorry and put into the road. And then the big invention, if you like, of these bulk bags came in, which made it neater and tidier, so they could just be craned and put into the front gardens, hopefully, or whatever.
I think that was a development of the crane, the lorry mounted crane or HIAB, or the whatever you want to call it. In the 90s, they weren't that popular. A lot of people, as you say, just used to just have tipper lorries, and so everything was loose and tipped off, and then these sort of lorries started to appear with cranes on, and then people were like, well, hang on a minute, why are we making a huge mess with all our product all over the driveway when we can actually package this in 1-ton bags? It's a lot neater and a lot easier to transport. And so the bulk bag market around that time started to really sort of get a lot larger, and we sort of capitalized, I suppose, on the demand that the customers, the landscapers that we were supplying, were sort of requesting these bags. So we started to bag them up and do it.
We also, about the same sort of time, started to, because at that point we were buying in soil, and then we thought, actually, we could probably make this ourselves. So we went into great lengths to work out what was needed to use the recycled products, the correct mixes, the sand,
source the
compost. So we bought ourselves a big 360. We had the space now to put the soils down, the sands down, and all the ingredients that go in it to make sure it was soil tested. So it was all good to go. And that was another big leap, really, in a sense. So we then started not only to be in the haulage industry and the sales industry, but now in the manufacturing industry as well.
Yeah.
So it started to all happen all about the same sort of time, really.
Yeah.
So this is all at Denham Yard. How did we get from the small plot in Springbridge to it's quite a large yard that you own now? How did you get from
we were driving around on a Sunday afternoon somewhere. We were looking for somewhere bigger because you can imagine it was getting very frustrating. We couldn't park, we couldn't do it. It was difficult. We wanted to expand. We had ambition, obviously. And we thought, and we were driving literally out. We used to go out in the country and, I don't know, take the dog for a walk or whatever. And we went past and said, this sort of place would be ideal. And we could see a man working literally in what was now our yard on a big 360. It was a Sunday afternoon. And we stopped and we went in and we sort of asked the guy, said, what's going on here? What's the story behind this? He said, oh, nothing to do with me, mate. I'm just the digger driver. I've been told to clean up and make this place tidy. It's Bucks Council. You need to speak to them. Right. So first thing Monday morning, we got hold of Bucks Council and they said, oh, well, actually, it's up for a tenancy agreement. If you're interested, you've got to be quick because the closing date's Friday or whenever it was. And we thought, oh, okay. He said, we'll send you an application form. And we literally had to fill in this application form with all our dreams and ambitions and what we could do with it and hopefully get the offer forward. And that was in a few days. So we rapidly went through. We literally, instead of posting it, we dropped the application form round to a place in Aylesbury and, pushed out for it. We did get an interview, a big panel. We were in a big judge's room and it was very, very...
Wow.
Frightening, and we had our big business plan sorted out and what all the ideas we were going to do, and we didn't actually get it. There was another couple got it. This was back in 1993 because we were quite hoping to get it and we didn't get it. So we're very sorry, but you were a good contender, but we've given it to somebody who's probably got a little bit more experience, and we've given it to these guys. So okay, fair enough, not a problem. We went back, obviously a little bit disappointed, but hey, it was meant to be, and so on. And then we actually went and bought a place in West Ealing. There was another little place for sale, and we bought that. 2 years down the line, we then get a call from Bucks Council, and they phoned up and said, remember that place you were looking at? Well, the guys that we gave it to, unfortunately, it didn't work out. Wondered if you're still interested. Might be, we said, might be. We'll have to think about this. We've got this place in Ealing now, and we don't know that we actually need it anymore, sort of thing. So the tables turned a bit. We said, well, it would be nice, but we'd like to do, because there were limitations of what you could do on the site. We'd like to have perhaps a little bit of topsoil. And, okay, we could probably do that. And could we do a little bit of turf as well? Could do that. Okay, then, yeah, we might take it. And hey, that was in 1995. Yeah. So, I never looked back. And then later on down the line, when they offered it to us to buy it, and then we could really set our roots, because up until then, as it was a tenancy, we were a bit restricted on what we could do, and why would we do it? Because
that was a big turning point.
It was a huge
when we were able
point
to buy the land, because while you're on a tenancy agreement,
at one point we literally got a letter through the post, didn't we, saying, this was in 2009 when they had those huge crashes, got a note through 6 months and you're off. And we went, what? Because we were living there. Yeah. We got lots of staff we were worried about. We said, we didn't know what to say. We were just like gobsmacked. Oh my God. We sort of half knew that it could always happen, but hoped it wouldn't. Then this came and said, so we phoned them up and said, well, why are you doing this? Well, we've got to sell it. So, well, we'll buy it. Yeah. What, you'll buy it? We'll buy it. We'll just buy it. We're just going to have to do it. So we went to every bank and got the deal, and never looked back really. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how did you go about growing your fleet then? You started off with Bob just in one lorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it kind of started when I came into the business. I came into the business when I left school, and then I got a job with an estate agency, and I learned a lot about sales, and I vowed never to come into the business, because I worked in the business as a teenager helping my dad, and when I was a sort of a young 20-year-old person, I was like, I'm not going into the family business, that's boring, I want to do my own thing. And then after 2 years working in an estate agency, I was like, actually it would be quite good to actually go into the family business, because it's actually better than it's better than I thought it was going to be, actually. And obviously in order to increase your fleet of trucks, and by this point, I think my dad was driving one lorry. I think he had one or two other sort of lorries where he had a driver, and he was sort of he was a jack of all trades. He was driving in the day, he was making bags at night, he organising all of that, fixing the lorries,
and the machinery in the yard as well. He would fix all that. I mean, I remember one Boxing Day, he was out there with that big old Bray machine that he'd got to do that, and he was fixing it all, covered in all.
And he so then we decided to go. Basically, I came in, and where I'd been an estate agent, I had lots of sales training, and I also had a keen interest in lorries, because as a kid I used to know all the makes of lorries. When we were driving along the car, I used to go, "Oh, that's a Scania, that's a Volvo, that's an Iveco."
You recognised it from the mirrors, didn't you?
I used to know, and so I realised at that point that I obviously had an interest in lorries. I'm not sure where it came from, but And I also had some sales training. So there was two things going on. Firstly, I thought, well, I wanted to have a big fleet of lorries. When I used to sit in the cab with my dad, sort of going up and down the A40 as a kid, I used to see a lot of hauliers and tipper lorries going up and down the road. People like, I remember at that time in the 90s, I think a company called McGee's, they're a big company, and they used to have some were up on like 90 lorries, and they always used to pass us. And I used to say to my dad,
had numbers on the lorries, didn't he?
They did.
Yeah, we used to say, one day we're going to have numbers on our lorries.
Yeah, and I used to look at the lorries and think, well, we've only got one or two. Why can't we have sort of 90? I mean, obviously that's quite a large number, but you've got to set your ambitions high. And I thought, well, the only way we're going to get more lorries is if we get more sales, because we don't need more lorries unless we need more sales. And one thing that Foxtons, which was where I used to work, was very good at was teaching people sort of how to sell and how to bring in to find leads and get work and get new businesses. So the first thing I did when I came into the business was I sat down and just did what I knew to do, and I got the yellow pages out. And I called through every landscaper in the yellow pages at the kitchen table. At this point, I didn't even have a desk or an office or anything. And I rang them up and I said, I'm just calling from Springbridge. You must know us, because we're obviously a turf and topsoil supplier in the area. And half of them turned around and said, well, we don't know you. I said, well, what do you mean you don't know my dad? My dad's he's a massive player in this area. And I was like, obviously we weren't quite as big as maybe we thought. So then we managed to get obviously I sort of it sort of grew from there. I remember I had a little blue book, and I used to write down in the blue book, I used to say who I'd called, what I called them about, the date and the time, and then if they had a landscaping project coming up, then I would put it in I had a diary, and I wrote it in the diary, call them in 3 months' time to see if that project had started and if they needed turf or topsoil. Anyway, after about 3 or 4 months of doing this, rather than me calling people, I used to give people my mobile number out, and people used to call me back, and I was like, oh, okay. So we had sort of some local landscapers say, oh, you called me a couple of months ago. Yeah, I need a price for this, or I need a price for that. And the next thing, my phone started going off the hook. It was getting really, really busy. I mean, apart from the fact that we did have other customers as well. The other the sort of the regular customers that we had, but these were sort of new customers that were coming on board. So I priced it all up and was winning all these jobs, and then my dad sort of turned around to me and he's like, Tom, he said, I'm only one man. I can't go around till 11 o'clock at night doing deliveries. He said, it's just not possible. So that's kind of where it started. So then I said, well, we need another truck then, don't we? Yep. So then we bought another truck, and we bought another truck, and we bought another truck. And we had quite a good, we were lucky because Clancy Docra, who's a utility company, they're based in Harefield, just near us, and they run. I think they run about 200 or 300 lorries or something like that, more than that even. And they used to have 7-year-old Iveco grab lorries that would come up for sale, and we got to know the sort of the manager there who was selling these lorries, and they were actually reasonably cheap for what they were, and they every few months they'd always have 5 or 6 lorries, so you could sort of we got before they went to auction, we could go in and just say, oh, we'll have that one and that one. We'd have a quick look around them, and that's how we went from we went from sort of maybe 3 lorries to about 10 or 12 lorries, because we basically just kept buying these second-hand Ivecos off of Clancy Docra, and growing it like that. And then it got to a point where it would have been around 2016. Do you know, we all sat down and we said, look, the maintenance is getting hard on these old lorries. Maybe we need to sort of make the jump to try and get maybe a few new lorries. And because we'd bought all these Iveco lorries, we decided that actually this was, we should stick with Ivecos, because we were all set up. We knew how Ivecos worked. We had all the parts. And we went and we bought a brand new Iveco grab lorry in 2016. And I remember it, and we were all really excited. It was brilliant. Do you remember the 2 days after the lorry came, and we had a driver and we put the driver in it, and didn't he go and crash it?
It did something.
Do you remember?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, he went and crashed it 2 days after we got our first new lorry, and he drove into the back of something on the M25. I remember it.
Yeah,
I mean, it was just really, and
hearts,
it was it was almost fate, because we'd sort of instilled in this driver he was actually a really nice guy. I remember him, and he was he was a really he was actually a good driver. But we'd instilled so much sort of fear into him of don't crash the lorry. I think, we're like, this is a brand new lorry. This is the biggest asset the company's ever had. Do not crash this lorry. And of course, the man was petrified, I think.
Sure.
So he ended up smashing. Anyway, it wasn't too bad. We came back from that, and then that's how we sort of went from. Yeah, it got, certainly once we got over 10 or 12 lorries.
Also, I think what happened as well, we needed to have our own fleet, because up until then we were using a lot of owner-driver lorries, and they became far and few as years went on, because the paperwork and so on was really getting too much for some of these owner drivers. So they started to retire, not continue. And so we had the demand for delivering, but we couldn't find these people to just call on them and just say, can you do that? They introduced things over the years. They would have introduced taco hours. I mean, when we first started, I don't think they were there in the same way as they are now.
They were there,
but they weren't being used in the same way. Yeah. We had all sorts of restrictions on what could go into what parts of London and where you could deliver and so on. So things
when the
got
mayor,
tricky for them.
Because when I think it was Ken Livingstone was the first mayor of London, I think.
The congestions.
And when Ken Livingstone came in, that's when I think there was a change in the way people ran, lorries in London, because not him directly, because it sort of evolved from, then you had Boris and you had Sadiq Khan, but that the sort of the standard of what lorries had to be, and the licenses you need, and started to improve. And because there was a lot of and there still is a lot of problems with cyclists in London, so people were they had to
pollution,
and of course the technology's moved on, so you had the cameras on the lorries and things like that. So if you weren't running a new lorry, like you couldn't probably go into London very easily, but B, it didn't look right. It didn't have the right image. It wasn't safe. It was, so everybody that was based in London, really, the aim was to try and get
onto the big sites and everything. The lorry had to be of a certain standard. The drivers had to be of a certain standard. You have to go through lots of hoops, which, all costs money, all adds on to the costs, but it does clean up the industry and professionalises the industry, you could argue.
Oh, yeah.
So, it's not always a bad thing, but for one person on his own, maybe it's just not viable. So,
So I think back when we started, we used hauliers, and we still use hauliers today. Like, we use a lot of hauliers, actually, to be honest. Like, we're always using hauliers to help us out. But I realised early on as well that there's nothing like having your own lorry with your own driver, and you have control of the deliveries, because when you've got that lorry on the tracker on your screen, you can give the customer an exact time of when it's coming, and you have full control of the situation. Whereas when you give it away to a haulier, it's more difficult to track. But there are a lot of situations where you have to use a haulier, because they might have a specific type of lorry, or you, as I say, if you're busy, you haven't got a choice. And but it's better. I was always of the opinion, if you can do it yourself, it's ultimately you have more control. I mean, actually, it's not necessarily, from a business point of view, it's not necessarily always the cheapest option, because like there's times when you buy a lorry where you actually, the lorry, if you're quiet in downtime, like, you think, in the winter time when it gets a bit quieter and the lorry's parked up, you're hemorrhaging money, the money, so, you're thinking that when you get those days, you think, oh, I wish I'd just given it to a haulier and I hadn't invested in this truck.
And also, I think, coming back to, you were saying about the customers and everything, up until that point when Bob was delivering and you were in the cab there, and Bob would go and see the customer one-on-one like that. And he would then say, is everything okay? Did you get the right service? Or everything was all done very much on a different basis, local basis compared to what it can be now. And he would say, oh, I see you've got some soil. What are you doing with the soil? Oh, you're going to need some turf. Well, do you know we do turf as well? And all of that. So we had to find ways, of bringing that in with when other drivers went out as well. And if you're using an outside haulier, well, you've lost that, which is where obviously the sales team now come into their own. But yeah, it was a big change. You
have. I think that the key is you do just have more control with it. There's one customer I can think of that he always needs his delivery at 8 o'clock in the morning. And when I first started dealing with him, I was like, oh, why do you need this? And then he explained it to me. He's like, look, the way I operate is I send a gang of men to a site to spread the stuff that you're delivering, and that's their job for the day, right? So if you turn up at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, it's not going to work for me, And once he sort of explained the sort of his requirements, I thought to myself, well, yeah, that kind of makes sense. Like, why would you want me to turn up at 1 o'clock in the afternoon to have your men standing around doing nothing? Yeah. So he used to insist that it had at 8 o'clock in the morning. And because we run our own lorries, we could do that and we could facilitate that. When we gave it to a haulier to do, sometimes they'd say they'd come in at 8 o'clock in the morning, and sometimes they wouldn't. Sometimes and then of course it was difficult. So there's times and places for that, but that's one of the reasons that we grew the fleet, I think, to be honest, and the fact that when you get all your lorries lined up in one go, it does look quite nice. Fulfilling the dream of seeing all the lorries up and down the A40 when I was
How many
when I was
lorries
8
have
years
you
old.
got now?
Yeah.
24 lorries.
And still expanding. We've got a new one on.
We've got a new one coming.
Yes.
That's right, Bethan. Yeah. We've got a new one coming in March. I think it's good that the fleet we've got actually is quite well spread, because we've got two Arctic lorries that do they've got the tipping trailers on and a flat trailer. They primarily work for the yard, as in they stock the material, they bring the stock in for the processing, but they do sort of larger deliveries to building sites and stuff as well. But they're not, I'd say 80% of their time is spent stocking the yard. Then we've got the tipper lorries, which just do the loose material. We've got the grab lorries, which again do loose. But the good thing about a grab lorry is you can do bags on it, bulk bags on it, as well as loose. So it's and you can take waste away whilst delivering material into the site. So grab lorries, they're like the most versatile in the fleet. And then because we do that many bags, we've got specific lorries that just do pallets and bags to service the sort of the turf orders and the ton bag orders basically as well, the bulk bag orders. So yeah, and as a company, I think we're in our area, you get a lot of companies that just run tippers, or they just run grabs, or they just run crane lorries. We've got a mix of everything, which means that we're quite well placed to serve quite a lot of different things. And
variety.
Yeah, I mean, we do, as you know, we do a lot of haulage as well, don't we? So
we do.
A lot of people just think we supply the materials, but if customers have got if they've got something on their site, like say they've had bulk bags delivered from somebody else that was specific product or something, or they hadn't ordered from us and they want to move it to another site, we get a lot of builders and landscapers and things asking us, can you move stuff from here to here, or can you collect this? There's a special material I need in Kent, and I need it delivering to my site round the corner from you. Can you pick it up for me and stuff like that? So the lorries aren't just there to service the products that we supply. They can be hired on their own as a separate business, and they actually are utilised by our customers a lot for that as well.
Yes, definitely. So how does Springbridge go about its approach to customer service? I mean, you were talking before about sitting with your blue book and reaching out to customers and to look at how much we've evolved, and we now have 2 account managers that do that actual job for you. What's sort of your approach to ensuring the best customer service?
I think one of the reasons, I mean, we sort of moved to the getting account managers, was it sort of about 18 months ago? I mean, prior to that, there was no one dedicated. We were always, looking at our customers and dealing with our customers in some way, shape or form, but there was no one specifically dedicated to that role. And I think it got to a point where, as the business has grown, the customer base has grown as well. And it became sort of unmanageable for sort of the inbound sales team or myself or anybody else in the company to look after the customers. So we got people directly in to manage the relationship. And I mean, when the job title of a customer and account manager is exactly that. You're managing the account, which means that it's a two-way street. They have to be happy. The customer has to be happy with the goods you're supplying. We have to be sort of happy to do the work as well. So there's a lot of communication basically that needs to happen, because it can very easily get into a situation where customers are not. If a customer isn't happy, they may not necessarily tell you. And so if you don't know, you can't improve. And the same can happen on the other side as well. If a customer's sort of expecting you to do something that really doesn't sort of work, and it could be a genuine thing. It doesn't necessarily have to be sort of, you're just, it just doesn't fit the model.
It goes back to our ethos from the very start. I mean, I can remember there would have been a problem once where, I don't know, the driver got stuck in traffic, or we'd had a puncture and the customer would phone up and say, "Where's my goods?" or something like that. And they'd say, "What shall I tell them?" I said, "It's quite simple. You tell them the truth."
Yeah.
And that's that. There's nothing, no problems then, because if they phone up 10 minutes later and someone's told them one story and then someone else tells them the other, you've lost them.
Yeah.
So you just tell them the truth. You have to be straight. You have to get them on your side. And we do our utmost for our customers. Why wouldn't we? And this is what we try and be fair in our price, in our delivery. In all aspects, the quality and so on, and politeness and so on. And if then I know all our staff are doing that. So once I've got them behind them, then I know that we can do the best service that we can, really.
There was a saying, a manager when I worked in the estate agency, he told me, he said, now I'm not sure if this is a good thing or not, but he said, always sort of under promise and over deliver. Don't over-promise and under-deliver, because if you over-promise and under-deliver, then you're just going to make yourself look silly. It's not the customer is going to expect something that you're not able to do. You're not able to fulfill. You've completely you've set it up to fail, basically. But if you under-promise and then over-deliver, everybody's happy. And so I've always gone with that sort of ethos. I mean, I think I try and just promise what we can do, and just be, as I say, I try not to under-promise. I just say, well, this is what we can do, and get on with it, and let's do it, and just, as you say, just be truthful.
Be straight.
It never works. Like, I've seen customers and, I've seen other companies operating, and, they'll, you hear the planner sort of going, oh, make up some story or do this or do that to get us off the hook, or it doesn't work. It doesn't work. What's the point of doing that? What's the point of doing that? Because like you're just gonna upset everybody within the chain, So and I think I think with having these account managers now, this is our sort of second or third year of having sort of full-time account managers. I think that's where we're seeing a big improvement in customer service. The other things that we're doing, I'm trying to. I know that technology is moving forward, especially with databases, with software. I mean, Amazon, for example, though they're not in the construction industry, they've moved the bar. because people, not just Amazon, but Amazon were the start of it, but that, Amazon's, your online supermarket shopping and stuff like that, they're giving you delivery time slots within a couple of hours, sometimes within 10 minutes, you can track the vehicles. Deliveroo, you can order something, it can be there in 10 minutes. Yeah. So people's expectation of delivery has shot up, and rightfully so, because the technology is out there to do it. Now, the construction sort of industry is a bit behind the times on that. I mean, it is a lot. There is a lot more to it than delivering a pizza. There's a lot more regulation. The lorry is obviously 15 times the size of a scooter. So there's a lot more to it. But I think it can be done. Maybe not, setting delivery targets to within a 10-minute time slot, but I think you should be able to give an accurate time within an hour or two to the customer if you've planned it properly and your drivers are well trained and your yard staff know what they're doing and they're loading it in the correct order. And I'm in the process at the moment of basically building software with a software developer that we can get all that together so that it works seamlessly. Let the computer do the maths, and when everybody plays their part at the correct time, the puzzle comes together and you get a finished product. And that's something that I've been working on and I'm investing quite a lot of money in, and I'm hoping it certainly be as good as any competitor that we've got. And I think that's customer service is every bit as important as getting the delivery on time, making sure the quality of the product is right, and doing all of that. If you haven't got that, you're never going to have a successful business. Even if you are, it's not all about price. It's about quality and service as well. So, and that's how we hopefully retain our customers. Yeah.
And I'd say we're already partway there. Well, we've definitely come leaps and bounds in the last couple of years with the bespoke delivery system that we've had. You've created that with a software developer as well, and that's all bespoke to us. And like you say about communication with the customer, it's got all of that built in, keeps the customer updated, and you're only going to improve that further by the sounds of it. Yeah.
I mean, even I was thinking yesterday, funnily enough, even a small thing that happened was when we were using like printouts and pen and paper for our stock sheets. Obviously when customers order, it goes onto a system, and then we, the yard get a list of what bags they need to make for the next day. And we used to have a guy come into our office and we used to print an A4 piece of paper, and we used to say, right, and he used to come in at 10 o'clock and he used to come in at 4 o'clock, and he used to keep, because the goods would be added to the stock, but he didn't have a live feed of that stock. So he'd come in at 4 o'clock. He'd then sort of come in at 4, and sometimes the stock sheet was completely different because customers were demanding next day delivery, which we were doing and we still are. And the stock sheet would be completely different to how it was maybe 3-4 hours before that, and that would cause a lot of stress. Whereas now, because we're on the tablets, as soon as an order in head office gets entered onto the system, immediately that goes straight down to the forklift, or the bagging machine, and they can make that there and then, without this pressure, which, the customer doesn't see that side of things, but that is a huge improvement on the service. That from the customer's point of view, it just works, but it's the stress behind it that makes life a lot easier, which means that what it does is it reduces the probability of something going wrong. It reduces the chance. Instead of ringing the customer up 10% of the time and going, I'm really sorry, like we've run out of time, we can't do your delivery, that's reduced to 1%. Nobody's perfect, but you can reduce it massively. Yeah.
That is not just for deliveries, that's for collections as well. So when someone places an order through HQ, straight to the yard, they get the bags ready immediately. You can have your collection ready within 30 minutes.
That's really helpful.
Yeah, it is very helpful. Yeah. Can you share any major success stories that Springbridge has had?
There's been a few, yeah. We've supplied, I remember once, this was going back probably 10 years ago now, and that was probably, I remember our biggest sort of large job that we took on. This when we had about 10 or 12 lorries, and somebody came to us. It was I think it was to do with Saracens Rugby Club. It was the car park for them or something in Hendon. It was around Hendon, and they needed like a large amount of topsoil. It worked out. They rung me and they said they need 40 loads a day for 2 weeks, and I at the time was a bit skeptical because obviously I was hungry for the work. I wanted to take on that sort of contract, but I thought, well, I don't know how I'm going to cope with this. But I said yes, and I gave myself a lot of sleepless nights, but we completed the job on time and everything was done. The quality of the soil was good. We kept everything going. And so I think I think that was a good success story. I mean, I had a lot of, the biggest problem with that job was keeping up with the stock because, it was a very, very difficult, trying to keep the compost coming in, trying to keep the sand coming in to make the topsoil the way we manufacture the topsoil. It put us under pressure. So I think that was a success story.
But that was the start of many, wasn't it? Really?
I mean and then of course once you started getting known for that sort of size job, you get a lot of other customers thinking, well, actually these guys, they're able to do it. I mean, having been through that experience myself, I'm sort of, sometimes when I ask suppliers to help me on big jobs and things like that, I always sort of look at them and think, well, can you do what you say you're going to do? Because that I know myself from my own experience that like saying yes to a job doesn't mean it's going to happen. There's a lot of stress and hard work behind the scenes that makes it happen. So I think we did another one in Green Park. That was another big topsoil job actually. And that one went well. Again, I was pleased.
That was quite
that.
tricky because there were lots of very historical buildings that we had to be careful, wasn't there?
Yeah.
Some very fancy lampposts, as I remember.
Oh,
we
that's
had
right.
had to get round.
Yeah.
And we kept saying, "Oh, don't knock the Queen's
Yeah.
lampposts down," and things like that. It was, and that other one going through Somerset House. Oh my goodness! It's like a Somerset House. They would.
Oh, they had to go through the arch. That's
through
right.
through the arch.
That's right.
Was that for a fashion show or something? I can't remember now. And they wanted it all suddenly all the lawn in the middle of the courtyard there. So you're in central London there going and then get a big lorry and make sure the crane's down or whatever it was, and had to go through this thing. It's quite a feat, but we did it.
Yeah. No, there's been a lot of jobs over the years. I mean, I
what's that one at Silverstone we've just done?
Yeah, we've done a big job at Silverstone.
Yeah.
We did that over Christmas. Just the sort of the Christmas week, there was a couple of customers that there was a customer there, that basically, I think they're building new apartments and houses for people to view the racetrack there, and it's all on the racetrack and everything. They're a bit like holiday lets. It's kind of an American style sort of racetrack kind of thing they're doing, and they needed all the gardens doing, and nobody else would actually. I think a lot of people were shut, and for those days coming up to Christmas, or they didn't want to do it, and maybe that's one of the reasons why we won the job anyway. And
perhaps they saw you while you were racing, Tom. Maybe they saw.
Well, that's true. Yeah, potentially. Yeah, I mean, I did think it was quite ironic because 3 weeks before that, I was racing my car around Silverstone, and it's got Springbridge down the side of it, and then we won a massive order for Silverstone. So. Yeah, it certainly helps with the justification of the sponsorship. So.
That's good. Good.
It's been such an insightful conversation. Thank you both so much for joining me today. And thank you to all our listeners.